even through all this process, I actually always had a great relationship with my kids. I just found ways to hide my alcoholism because they were so young. But they didn't know that dad was mentally battling with his demons. So,
Give me Ben. Okay. Ben, take one.
Our very first maybe baby interview.
Yay.
So exciting.
Yeah, it looks great.
Good. You feel good?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I also knew that you're never fully ready to become a father. But I just trusted God, the process, and it's probably, if not one of the best decisions we were able to make.
I didn't grow up religious, or I don't really have religion in my life, but I do like the idea of having someone or something to trust. What advice would you give when it is just fear all around and you don't really have an entity to lean on for trust?
Wow, that's a great question. I think I wouldn't have the right answer because even in my marriage, there are times where I felt like if it wasn't for God, I think our marriage would have not lasted. I've been married for 14 years now. And with parenting, I think it's one of those things that I can see it. This didn't happen to us, but I can see how it can complicate a relationship, and in many ways can break a relationship between a husband and wife, actually. So I'm not here to preach. I'm not here to say believe in one thing or another. But for me, I couldn't imagine doing life, and especially as parent, without my faith, because I failed myself quite a bit. I always do wonder, like, how do other parents who don't believe in God or another faith, how do they do it? I think it's a pretty hard thing to do, quite honestly, because I was raised in a really broken home. My parents were married, but my dad was very abusive. And I saw a lot of domestic violence growing up, and a lot of trauma. And the only thing I really saw was like my mom's faith in God through those dark moments. And I think that's why I was a little bit hesitant to become a dad, because I came from a background where my dad wasn't a really good dad at all. So I felt this, like, will I repeat his mistakes? Will I not be able to step up to the plate and be a good father? I would highly encourage couples who don't have anything in their life other than themselves to seek something to reinforce and give help in their journey. Every family, even though we're all parents, everyone has different problems, everyone has different needs, and we're here not to judge. We're not here to look up or down on each other. We're there to just bear each other's burden and to support each other. And even without that, I think it'll be really difficult, because I think that parenting is an intimate thing within that unit, but it's also a very communal thing that I feel like in our society these days, we kind of miss that opportunity. We do, in some instance, need a little bit of that tribe.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting, because I've never, like I said, I just haven't been exposed to a lot of religion. And so
Yeah.
I think that's a really cool benefit that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah. It makes me have to step up to be a good husband first. So it's like I have this philosophy that I really want to have a great relationship with my God. And after that, I want to have a really good relationship with my wife. And after that, I want to have a really good relationship with my kids. And I think that if I handle those things in those proper hierarchy, my kids really are the ones that get to see the best of me. So I want to make my wife the best version she can be, so that she can be the best version as a mother. And for me, I want to be the best husband, so that I can continue to be a good father to my kids. So it all goes hand in hand. We do these things called family worship, where we'll, like, once a week, we'll, like, read a Bible story and talk about the key points. But the really cool thing about that is that at the end, we talk about like, hey, does anyone have prayer requests? And we call around, and our kids just find that opportunity actually allows them to share things that normally they would never share, about struggles at school, things that they're struggling with personally. And we could just be chilling as a family and watching a family movie. And because of that setting of just being able to read the word and be a little bit more intentional, something about that allows them to open themselves up. So I can see how my kids are able to feel love through faith, through our family, and build that trust, because I think that's one of the things that is so dear to me as a father that I didn't have as a kid growing up because of my language barrier to my dad, as well as his first generation Korean father figure. We never had a real deep, intimate relationship with each other. And that's the thing that I want more than anything else, is to have that trust with my sons. And it starts with these small moments where we can pray for each other, encourage each other. It allows me to be also vulnerable in front of my kids, to share the things that I'm struggling with. And I think that's a powerful thing for kids to see, because I think as kids, you can sometimes think your parents are perfect, or maybe they're not perfect, but you never see them say sorry. So I think this is an opportunity for me to just be real with them and to show a side of me that is vulnerable, so that that can instill a certain trust and respect in our relationship as a family.
Can you describe like how you're approaching raising boys in today's world?
First off, I am an alcoholic, so let's start there. So I've been clean from alcohol for 3 years. And I had a really bad, this was during COVID, where I think a lot of people might be able to understand, but just being really burnt out with the amount of work that I was doing. And alcohol was my way of coping with the stress, the anxiety, my identity as well. And I got to a point where I actually had to quit work, which was a double whammy in terms of a father, because as a father, I think the biggest thing that you have pride in is to provide, specifically in the realms of finance, for your family. So I had the shame of my wife working, and I had to seek help, get counseling, went to AA. But through that process, I was able to get intensive therapy where I learned the process of being vulnerable, and to learn how to not identify myself with like my work, and not to also be riddled and tattooed with shame. And when I finally got to a point where I was healing, I was able to let go of my shame and able to actually talk about it. I found that I was like, wow, like this big problem I had in my life is now a potential opportunity as a gift, if I'm willing to be vulnerable, to share with other people. Men in their 40s have so much of this midlife crisis and identity that's rolling in their life, and it's all predicated on like who they think they are in their career and what they do. And when that kind of crumbles, they crumble. So for me, my job is, as a father, I really want to build up my sons to be vulnerable in a way that they can express themselves. But at the same time, I'm there to really encourage and build a really wellspring of strength. Me becoming a parent, I think it was one of those things that like I had worries of, am I going to be able to be the best dad that I am because of like the background and like the trauma that I came from. So during the time when I was getting therapy, I remember writing a letter to my dad that I had to quit my job, and kind of like, I try to write this letter in a way where like I was in some ways explaining to him the pain that he caused me. But it was also a letter in which I was also reminding him of the things that I appreciated of him. Like anything else in life, it's not like my dad was like this like 100% black villain. I think where life is interesting is that he did things that I was very much scarred and had tremendous amount of pain, but he did things in other ways where he showed love. And that's what complicates things. So I gave him that letter, and I remember him reading that letter, and his response was like, you should have never quit your job. It's like, you don't do that. And as soon as he said that, you know, there was like this inner child or this boy in me that wanted to be embraced by my dad, where I can like crying on his like his shoulder, and you know the dad's like patting him back, it'll be fine. But it was like this opposite, like stoic Asian dad, just like you don't quit. And but the funny thing is, when he said that, the thing that I wanted from my dad, which was empathy, maybe some degree of like verbal love, it was actually in so many ways my way of forgiving him. It was a way for me to acknowledge that I had this huge hurt from my dad that now I'm able to like release and put it out there, and for me to move forward and not let my background and what I went through as a kid to scar and no longer dictate my identity. So it was in some ways a release of that. And it wasn't contingent on like what my dad said. So that kind of gave me the ability to reconstruct myself and find myself for who I am. And it just helped me to build that confidence and vulnerability. And that really repaired a lot of my relationship with my wife. And it just took a while. But I'm just grateful that I went through that process, because it helped me to realign myself with, one, to forgive my dad, because I think that was always in the back of my head. And then two, reorient who I am. And then three, then to give my best and my all to my kids.
Did you feel like it took time for you to bond with your baby?
Okay, great question. I'm the opposite. As soon as my son was born, my oldest, Cohen, I remember just seeing his face. And I had that classic fear as a father where it wasn't like, oh God, give me a healthy baby. I was like so afraid that the baby might not be like cute. I know that sounds really shallow, but I was just like really mortified. Like, what if, and I was ready to see this baby that's blue and all wrinkly, because he literally comes out of the womb. But he came out, no joke, and he was smiling, and he had these big eyes. But I fell in love immediately. I was enamored. I lost my breath. It was just a pure joy, jubilation, out of body experience. So for me, it was nothing but serendipitous, like euphoria. My second one was more, I was super excited, but I was just more relieved that he came out healthy. My wife was healthy. And it was more of this like we can kind of let our breath down. But I was just as excited. But the first one's different. The first one is just, you don't know anything. You go through the whole baby class. And when he was born, I was just immediately smitten by him.
How do you not fear everything once you have a new infant in the world?
Being a father for the first time, I do remember that classic feeling of getting in the car and feeling so paranoid. But honestly, I think that I was just overwhelmed with love. And I think love conquers a lot of fear. And I just trusted God in the process. I also believe that I have a really strong wife. She just is she's more or less the bedrock of our family. And she just has a really even keel spirit about herself. So when you have a partner that isn't showing a degree of fear, it helps the entire family to have a certain unity and cohesive plan and perspective in life to just face the things that come our way. And you can only deal with things one day at a time, and we just try to hold on to that. we can look at the news and all these different statistics of what's happening to kids. But we got into becoming parents because we wanted to extend our family with love and gratitude. And that's how we want to parent and have been parenting up to this point.
It sounds like growing up, you had a lot of expectations that were put on you. And so how do you manage having expectations for your kids?
Yeah. So my wife and I always say, like, we don't want you guys to be like perfect. Like, that's not, and I guess that's contrary from the Asian perspective. But, where I grew up, where like, you got to get an 8++, right? To get some sort of like, affirmation and love. And that's like a stereotypical Asian comment, I guess. But for us, we want to see, one, you don't ever quit on a bad day. But that doesn't mean that you have to do something that you don't want to do for the rest of your life. But you just don't quit on a bad day, right? So like, let's say you get to a point where like, hey, this jujitsu thing's not for me. Then that's fine, right? But we'll talk about it. We'll discuss about it. But one of the things I do want to teach my kids, and we're trying to do that, is just like, we want to build endurance. We want to build this thing that will allow us to help us have the courage to face difficulty. So me as a dad, my job is like, I'm trying to build them up to, you ask that question like, oh, what is it like with this fear of this world? And my response is that I want to raise my kids that they can face the struggles in life and not hide them from the fear. Like, I want to protect them, don't get me wrong, but I want them to find the strength to know how to deal with a hard situation than someone that's going to avoid the situation.
Do you ever experience regret?
No. Well, I struggled with being a dad in my early years, without doubt. So that was one part that I would like almost fantasize and daydream about, of like, man, I remember the days where I can just go fish, or I can hang out and have my own time. But in general, no regret. It's probably one of, like, next to my wife, it's the best second thing that's ever happened to me, for sure. Yeah.
Do you think that phase of daydreaming, like what your life used to be like, is something that everyone goes through? Because people don't really talk about that very often.
Oh, that's a great question. I am close with a couple of my guy friends, and yes, they do struggle with that. Like, it's like the bowl of capacity. So it's like, you give, as a dad, you're like 100% in your career. You got to be there for your wife. You got to be in, like, that cup eventually becomes really small, to allow yourself to be taken care of. And that's when you get the burnout. And it also strains the marriage too, because in some ways, instead of your partner being a person that you're working with and bonding with, now you got your kids in the middle of that. So it always puts you and your spouse in a place where it's not that you are neglecting your spouse, but all that energy goes towards your kids. So it can make your relationship with your spouse like, oh my gosh, like, we haven't been on a date night in like whatever, 6 months to a year or whatever. So like, it has those kind of impacts as well. And I think that's for sure. I think other couples probably will deal with that at some point, and you got to put yourself and your marriage and all these other things as a priority, and you have to talk about it and discuss about it. But that doesn't mean you're like, neglecting your kids. It's actually a good thing, I think, so yes, 100%. I think that is one of the things that people will probably struggle with.
Did you feel like you were mourning your past life, your life before kids?
That's so funny you say that, because my friend who I talked to on the app Polo said he mourned about himself in that situation for like 2 years. It was like in this deep, and it was like it wasn't just him as a parent, but it was like, I remember when I had a certain weight to myself, I had a certain lifestyle to myself. And he said like he mourned like 7 different versions of who he was before he became a parent. I remember when I was working with my first design team, everyone was more or less single. And I just felt this like, wow, like they can go to happy hour, they can travel, and they can have this kind of like full extension of their resource and allocation to their career. And I just felt like I couldn't do that. And I think there was a bit of me feeling a degree of even imposter syndrome of not being able to, one, have that lifestyle, and then two, to like have to see that was like a bit of a, I don't know how I say it. It's not like I regretted being a parent, but there was a feeling of like I didn't feel comfortable in that situation, And that's one of the big things I had to like work out during my process of counseling and stuff was a degree of that.
Do you think that you can live a fulfilled life without kids?
Yes, I do believe you can definitely live a life that's fulfilled without kids. I do believe that.
As I'm trying to make my decision, I hear a lot about like once you have kids, your capacity to love grows in ways that like you can't even comprehend without kids.
Yeah.
So sometimes I feel like, well, if I choose not to have kids, am I going to only be experiencing like a limited amount of love in my life?
The thing I love about my kids, that relationship, is like with kids, they make old things new again. I think that's the thing that I love about the most. Like, because you get to a certain age, and I'm in my 40s, you kind of feel like you experience life for what it is, right? Especially if you have a husband or you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, right? Like you've probably gotten your heart broken. You've gotten into fights. You know how that reconciliation feels. That first love feels like. And those are just the rite of passage in life. And to be honest, those things are like in some ways not something that everyone gets to experience, right? So love is very much a beautiful gift that like, if you get to experience it, it's such a great thing. But with kids, I think that, there is this love of like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just, it feels very much like, for me, it's like, it makes me relive life again. And it brings a certain joy and purity through that. And small things that are very menial become very beautiful again. Just walking around the neighborhood and, I just, like one thing I love about my kids is like just holding their hands. I stare at my son's hands because I remember my mom used to do that. She'll like grab my hand and she'll just look at my hand and she'll like be profound by the texture of my hand, and she'll look at it and she'll like massage it. And I'm like, that's so weird. And now I'm old. I'm like, I look at my son's hand and I do the same thing because I see it grow, and I see him becoming bigger and stronger, and there's character in someone's hand. And my oldest son has like these nice, juicy male sausage fingers, and like small things like that. You're just like, wow, like life is good. God is good. Like this is a beautiful thing. Just like, and all you did was like hold your son's hand. You know what I'm saying? It's not like you went on this like extravagant vacation and ate some exquisite thing or listened to poetry and saw paintings that were so inspiring. Those are great things, by the way. But something like the smell of your kid, like that's one of the most beautiful, ephemeral things that is awesome because it's not long lasting. And that I remember that feeling of like, the whole chest to chest, and then it's just like, oh, it's a amazing feeling, and it's just, and you're right, it's a feeling that you're like, wow, like I unconditionally love this human being that I never thought I could do before, and it's a really beautiful, priceless thing. And I enjoy being a parent when I find the simplest things beautiful. Just like looking at my son's hand and seeing like, you know, like he has my hand. So like there's like this beautiful, weird feeling because of that. And then when I see my son's hand, my youngest one, he has like the hands of like my wife. So like it reminds me of my wife. So yeah, I have this deeper connection to that too, right? And that's a trip too in itself. You're like, wow, like it's a little mini me, or it's like it's a little version of my wife or whatever, you know. And there's such a beautiful like connection to that. I know this sounds gutsy for me to say, but like I know everything in my life is a gift. It can be taken away any second. My kids can be taken away, my house, my career, anything. So I want, because of that, I don't own my kids. They're my kids by nature, but I'm being lent to them. They're being lent to me. So my job is to enjoy them as much as I can. My job is that they one day become great men that will find their queens and become great loving husbands and fathers. Like that's my goal, is to raise them up. But in the time and the process, it's like, it's a gift. It's like, I try to look at them as like not a possession that's like I cling on and I can't let go. It's more like, this is the best gift that I take it with open hands, that one day I have to give it back. And when I say give it back, it's hopefully meaning that when they become adults, everything we teach them makes them really good men of integrity, men who fear God, men who are loving in the communities, men who are there to help their neighbors. So that's just kind of how I, you know, look at it. And now, yeah, so I don't know. I guess you can, but I think there is a huge blessing in becoming a parent for sure, though. You know, being a parent, my friend said this. He says, you become a parent through the act of love. You make love. And then you make love, meaning like a love comes out of that. That's divine. Like, how do you explain that? You know, I mean, animals do it in a very more of this natural reproduction, survival of the fittest, but as human beings, you make love, and out of that love, you create love. That's why I don't think people talk about that as much. And that's love. Like for me, life is about growing the currency of love. So that love that you have with your husband and wife, I think hands down is the most important love. That's just me. Okay. Like that's the bread and butter of everything. But it's kind of like having a beautiful tree. Like the kids are like the fruit, right? Like the relationship between you and your wife is the root. It's the strong tree. And then your kids are like the apple, right? Is life worth living without the apple? Yeah, I think it's going to be a little like less fulfilling maybe. But it's not the center, right? The center is the root. It's that, but it makes it so enriching. You know, it's the love. It's, you know, like the bees pollinate the flowers and then it creates the fruit. And like that's it somehow, some way, believe in God or not, like that is a process in which you can't even explain, that makes sense in some weird way. You make love to make love that creates love. Like, come on, like, how is that not a beautiful thing?